Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Please forgive my voice. I just got done with surgery last Monday and was in hospital for 5 days and supposed to be wearing a neck brace, but when I put that on, it's gonna like really lower my voice. So forgive me if my voice sounds a little bit scraggly today, but I know some of you guys are probably like, man, if I had triple spinal fusion surgery, I'd be at home in the bed. Well, I don't believe in that. I have too much work to do, or should I say, I got work to do. And when I have exciting guests that want to come on and share their stories about how they overcome certain things and what they're bringing out of their pain back into the community, I got to get up and do my job. Today is no different. I talked with this young lady all the way from Canada, and at first it was kind of, let me just be real. We talked and I was like, look, we got to go deeper than this. I know there's a lot more to you than what you got on this piece of paper. And I was able to open up Pandora's box. And I'm pretty sure she would tell you that it was like a breath of fresh air to finally be put in a situation where you're comfortable and able to share your story, because her story is now impacting other individuals in her community. Without further ado, all the way from Canada, I'd like to welcome to the show, Jacqueline Griffith. Welcome to the show, Jacqueline.
Thank you so much, Andre. I'm really glad to be here.
Hey, thank you so much for taking the time. Tell us a little bit about you. Man, this is crazy. Jacqueline, can you imagine trying to talk after somebody just cut your throat open, move your voice? And
You're doing amazing. You're doing great.
Okay. Tell the viewers a little bit about you before we get started with the show.
Okay. So I am Canadian. So I was born and raised in Regina, Saskatchewan. If you're familiar with that, it's a prairie province. Gets very, very cold in the winter. So I have a lot of tough blood in me. I grew up in Regina. I lived there until I was about 12 years old. My mom is from the Maritimes, the Atlantic region of Canada. So I also spent quite a bit of time back and forth between the West and the East as a child, and eventually moved East as well. But growing up, I had I think I had a good home. But there were things that I wasn't really completely aware of until I was probably about 9 years old. There was some things in my family that were, I think a lot of your viewers can probably relate to. I think a lot of families try to put on a really good face and appear like, everything's a-okay. Right. But when you peel back the layers, there's often things going on, unhealed things from like our parents, right. Histories, that show up in family life. And so my family was no different in that way. There was, historical trauma from my mom's family. And when I say that, I mean that, like, I think what happens is that there can be intergenerational trauma. So, there's a lot of fighting or a lot of conflict, a lot of not so great dynamics. And then that seems normal. And then each, generation kind of passes that on. Right. And so, so there was sort of an incident when I was 9 years old that I won't go into big detail, but I had been away it was actually New Year's Eve, and I came home to the house just being, glass on the floor. Like, there was obviously something had happened the night before. So that was when I became aware of some issues in my family. So, there was emotional abuse. There had been domestic violence before I could remember. there were other things like, like addiction, alcohol. And so that I eventually discovered that that was part of why I was such an anxious child. So I experienced a lot of anxiety as a child, and I realize now that it was because I was seeking control. I was seeking stability. There were unknowns in my life, things that I didn't understand, and I wanted to control it. There was tension without me really being completely conscious of that.
Hey,
And so,
Jacqueline, not
yes.
not to not to cut you off. When you mentioned control,
Hmm.
and evidently with what you saw going on in your household, there appeared to be, and I don't know because I wasn't there. There appeared to be no control in the house, so to speak. So who was the person when these things began to surface and you start to see these things out of control, broken glass everywhere, and
Hmm.
the chaos? Did your
Hmm.
mom not have the ability to stop it, or who did your dad realize what he was doing and come to a halt? I mean, who was the person that got between the chaos?
Right. So, it was my father, who struggled with. So again, this is another thing that I think viewers might be able to relate to, is that when we don't deal with our frustrations, when we don't know how to communicate, when we don't have a way to um, kind of take our difficulties and actually address them in the moment, then a
Right,
lot of things get bottled up, right? A
right,
lot of people will, really bottle things up. And so in the case of my father, um, and again, as you said, like, we're not here to blame people. We're not here to
right,
be angry. It's just about kind of understanding, right?
right,
And so in his case, he didn't have the emotional capacity. He had never been taught how to, I guess, I assume, really to communicate um, how he was feeling. And so there was, for the most part, things were seemed very quiet. Things were pretty like stable, right? But then so whatever would happen internally for him, it would be something that didn't seem like that big of a deal that would cause him to, you know, um, have an episode of um well, like, it's emotional abuse, but throwing things, smashing things in anger or frustration, right? And so, as I said, that didn't happen very often. But the fact that it was kind of there, that it existed, that it was a possibility, was what also kind of had things walking on eggshells, right?
Jacqueline, what were the two things in you, I say 2029, you look at yourself as an adult and looking back now, what were some of the things that sent your father over the edge and maybe sent your mom over here? And bear in mind, no, the audience need to understand, we're not attacking her parents. What we're trying to put is a blueprint of emotional trauma. How do we come out of it when a lot of this stems from the time that me and you talked about, Jacqueline, from the ages of 1 to 7 years old? And now that we get older, we begin to look back and kind of analyze it. What were some of the things that probably triggered your father and triggered your mom?
I think that um, probably, I mean, I think this is what triggers people a lot in general, is not feeling seen, not feeling heard, not feeling um like that connection. And I think that he may have felt misunderstood. I think that there were attempts, definitely, to try and, like, talk with him, connect with him, but there was that wall, that he had. I can't really speak to those kind of intricacies with my parents' relationship because I think only they really know.
Yeah.
I do know that my mom did try to talk to him about things. There was a level of vulnerability, I think, that he found really difficult to ever show. And so instead, it showed up in anger, which is so often the case for people because anger is an accepted emotion in the world, especially for men. Don't cry, don't don't emote too much is kind of the message that men often get.
Mhm.
And but it's pretty normal for a man to be mad or to be, frustrated or whatever. So I think that that definitely played into, how he ended up um, um, you know, ending up with these episodes at times. So
How was his parents, your grandparents? How were they? Because usually the grandparents kind of shared a little different outlook, oh, these are my grandkids versus your mom and dad. Did you see variations of your dad with your grandparents and your grandmother?
it's so interesting. Their dynamic was so interesting. So my grandmother, his mother, was I would describe her as a quite a reserved person. So what I think was perhaps lacking in his early childhood years was that nurturing, that attachment. So I don't necessarily believe that he had like a secure attachment to his mother. And like there was sort of the belief that, a baby's crying, you let them cry. Like if they're trying to go back to sleep or whatever, you don't, you just let them cry. And that was something, a bit of a philosophy that came out when my grandmother, when I saw her looking after my cousins. So I got a glimpse into kind of the parenting that style that she thought was right, which was probably a bit more tough love. I think she found him really difficult to deal with. Like he was had a lot of behavioral issues. So I think that there was just a bit of a lack of nurturance. But I don't think that there was any violence in the home. I'm sure he got spanked, all those kinds of things, but I don't think that there was a level of physical violence that I think that I don't believe that he saw that in that model in his family, is what I'm trying to say.
How do you begin to maneuver yourself? And were there ever any moments that you felt in harm's way?
There was once, or maybe once or twice, yeah. Where it was just like you just stay out of the way, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah. But he never laid a hand on me ever.
How do you begin to start trying to understand? You're getting older. Um, you realize something is going on. How do you
Mhm.
how do you restructure your life and build a blueprint from what you're seeing in your household? Because as we become parents ourselves, adults, we tend to see what our parents falls were, and we go, oh my God, I don't want to fall into that state of mind. And some individuals actually fall back into that same trap because they don't lay out the blueprint or have the tools to move forward and to avoid that pitfall. What did you do to avoid yourself going into that pitfall?
Right. So I think that I was fortunate in that my mom actually had those conversations with me. Like some might say that they were a bit advanced for a kid, but I think that it benefited me because she would explicitly say, like, it's never okay for there to be any violence in a couple. There should, like, this isn't okay. Like, none of this is okay. This isn't normal. I don't want this for you. She made it very clear that she wanted like my siblings and I, but especially the girls, um, to get a career, to have a way to be financially independent, to never, because she didn't get a higher education until she was a little bit older, which, I was very proud of her to go back to school when she was in her 40s, actually. Um, but but financial reasons is a lot of times why people do feel stuck. And they're trying to do the best for their kids because they don't want to end up impoverished if they split up. So I think those conversations really planted a seed for me that I needed to be able to stand on my own 2 feet, that I needed to find somebody who would be respectful and good to me and all of those things. And then I would say too that along the way, going to counseling when I was in my early 20s, when they eventually did actually get divorced, was when I decided to go to counseling. So that was really helpful. Being interested in psychology and social work also allowed me to then understand about all of these types of issues and then apply them to myself, do a lot of like digging and trying to gain that insight. So I think those are some reasons why I didn't sort of repeat the pattern.
Jacqueline, did you ever ask your mom before you started to get, you probably asked this after the fact of the divorce. Did you ask your mom, why'd you stay in this? If you're telling me and my brother that this isn't acceptable, why are you staying in this?
I don't think I think I kind of knew. I think I never really asked that explicitly. No. Looking back though, I can see the pattern of what happened between the two of them. And I know that this is the reason why a lot of people stay in, either abusive or toxic relationships, is because there were good times. There were peaceful times. There were times that they had fun. There were times that things were good. And I think that when someone really loves someone, they look for those good times, and they kind of, there's almost a sense of loyalty to it, I think. So without sort of speaking for her, I think that that's perhaps that pattern that she may have fallen into.
You wind up going to therapy. My hat's off to you. I recommend a lot of people need to explore getting their mental mind in check. When you went there, and I know I go to therapy. I know what it's like. When you go into that office, you have to be honest with yourself. What was the one part of that journey that you found was going to be the most difficult part of moving forward and creating the life that you wanted for yourself and not be in that same scenario?
I think it was gaining that self-worth, that self-esteem, because when there are those parent wounds that you have, because it wasn't just necessarily the walking on eggshells. It was sort of this, at times, just a feeling of disinterest. And so when you have a parent that seems to be disinterested in you, and you're trying as a child to get their attention, or you're trying to feel accepted,
Validation, maybe.
Validation, yes, exactly. You want them to delight in you, and when that's missing, there's a void that then needs to be healed. It needs to, a lot of work needs to be done then. And so that journey of self-worth and self-esteem, and not sort of seeking validation in the wrong places, and all of that stuff becomes, I think, the work that was probably the hardest, and I would say has taken me the longest to arrive at.
You wind up finding your calling.
Mhm.
You wind up finding your calling out of
Yeah.
out of pain, out of
Mhm.
suffering. It was already there. What made you decide to get into social working and helping people? And like I said, a lot of our trauma opens up opportunities somewhere else, and clearly this happened. But you said earlier in our pre-interview that you've always had a tendency to want to be a caregiver and to understand people and to know why people act the way they do. Elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure. Like I think because of as I mentioned earlier, my mom used to have those pretty deep conversations with me. So, it was even things like say if another kid at school was being mean, she would kind of have me dig a little deeper. Oh, well, like, it's not just that they're being mean. They must not be feeling very good about themselves. And it sort of taught me to like not take things on at the surface level, that
Mhm.
people are complicated, they're complex. And I think that I just had a real interest in understanding people, and then to add to that, wanting to contribute to the world in some way, to help people. I find it extremely gratifying each time that either one of my counseling clients or one of my coaching clients, when I see them progressing, when I see them healing, when I see them, they'll be so proud of themselves, telling me like, I'm not doing this thing anymore, like, say people pleasing, or now I'm feeling so much better about myself. I understand my worth. Like I am honestly like just beaming. Like there's nothing like it. Like it's just a feeling of satisfaction to see people learning about themselves and then doing better and then having a happier life because of it. And
Mhm.
so to me, that also contributes to, like, if they're doing better, then their kids are doing better, their spouses are doing better, the community is doing better. Like it has such a ripple effect. And then generations after are healthier,
Mhm.
are happier. And so yeah, to me, that's amazing.
And you have a master's, correct,
I do. Yes, in social work.
in social
Mhm.
work. How difficult was that for you, as well as trying to navigate your own life and making sure that you're on the right path? A master's is totally different than just having a BA or anything. The under a degree is a degree, but a master's is meaning you put some work in there. How important
Right.
was that for you to get that master's based on what you had went through?
It was really important to me. I mean, I think that when you come from a certain background, you think like, oh, you have doubt in yourself, like who am I to do this?
Right.
But I think that I also knew that the only way that I would be able to accomplish the dream of being able to one day open up my own private practice, which I have done, it would be to get my master's. Like that door wouldn't be available unless I did that. And I've always believed that like you have to do what it takes if you've got a dream, or if you have to be committed to do what it takes to have what you want in life. And so um it was hard because I had to walk away from a job. I didn't love the job, but it was good pay. I think some people might have said it was good enough, but it wasn't what I wanted. And so the master's was extremely important, and was a big stepping stone in my life.
When you look at social work today, and you have your own practice, and you're seeing people come in and out of your office, what are three of the biggest things that people are dealing with today that you look at and go, wow, I probably dealt with that same identical situation?
Yeah, I think I think a lot of um I think like childhood trauma. I think that a lot of people can relate to that, either in a way that they didn't necessarily, like sometimes people experience neglect. It's not so much that sort of direct abuse, but they sort of didn't get their needs met. And I think in a way, like I didn't get my needs met. It's like emotionally within my relationship with my father. So I do have a lot of clients that were either abandoned by their father or they were emotionally abandoned. And so that's something that I understand and I can relate to and I can help them heal using some of my own experience.
Right.
Yeah. And I think the anxiety for sure. I see a lot of people come in with anxiety, and I've had clients who, they really didn't understand that there was a connection between the anxiety that they experience now and their early childhood experiences.
Mhm.
And so bringing that awareness to them that the instability of their home life, they're walking on eggshells. It like that sort of experience really just lays the groundwork for this need for control and this need for and just kind of generally a feeling of uneasiness, dread, a lot of things that go along with anxiety and worry. So
Let me ask you a question before we wrap up. And first of all, let me say thank you for opening up on the show the things that you went through, because you clearly told me you have never shared this part of your life with anyone. I'm blessed that you allowed this platform to do that. My question to you before we wrap up is what are some of the correlations between children or adults that come from a single parent home? Like you might have a daughter who doesn't have the father, the son that doesn't have the mom, or the parent alienation going on when you have custody situations going on. How big is this now becoming in your field? How often are you seeing this?
So I wouldn't say myself I'm seeing it as often it probably as it is actually taking place. I think that it is a huge thing going on today. I think there's a lot of families that that are mixed families or blended families. There's a lot of upheaval with custody and things like that, or single parents. So I think that yes, I mean if you look at statistics, like I don't have any on hand, but it's definitely increased over the years, that's for sure. And probably as you're aware, like the divorce rate it is very high these days, and so there are a lot of children that are growing up in in two different homes, in single family homes, as you pointed out. Um, I think it depends on how people handle it. Like, I think that like some children can grow up in like very healthy, not saying that there wouldn't be something missing, but they can grow up in a very healthy home with a single parent. It just depends on that parent and what they're able to give. And if there's other supports, like say grandparents or something like that, I think that they're like that can be a very happy, healthy home. Um, so I don't know if I answered your question there, but
Mhm. But when you see kids coming to you, you do deal with kids too as well, right?
not so much. No, I used to, but when I went virtual completely, I haven't been seeing children just because I want to be face to face with them. I want to be able to pick up on everything. So I don't see kids
When
these
you were
days.
seeing kids when you were seeing kids, what were some of the things that they would what are some of the things that you heard that was troubling for them, as they got
Mhm.
older?
Um, some of the things that they it was more so when I was seeing children or teens. It was a lot of the pressures going on in the world, like the social media, bullying, it was, you know, like one of my last young people that I saw, like adolescents, came from a two-parent home,
Mhm.
but she was experiencing a lot of bullying, and so those were some of the things that she was dealing with, and the social media, and then so there was a lot of issues that she was going through, like cutting and depression and anxiety and just the whole gamut, eating issues, so
Jacqueline,
but it's
what is the solution, Jacqueline, for this? We see this all the time, and a lot of parents don't seem to understand that we ourselves as parents are usually the mechanism for why the kids are doing what they're doing to avoid this. What's the blueprint? Let's get down to it. What's the blueprint in your book that we need to do to stop this from happening?
I think that the connection with your children has to start immediately. Like, I'm talking pregnancy, I'm talking when they're infants. Like, we cannot underestimate when their social and emotional needs start. Like, they really do start in utero, but if we're going forward from that, it's so if they come from a home with a secure attachment, meaning that their needs are met when they're a baby, when they're under 5 years old, like they cry, you look to feed them, you look to change them, you try to figure out what's going on to the best of your ability. That creates a secure attachment. And so that emotional and social well-being, that's called infant mental health. And if we can create solid mental health for our young children, that is the beginning of the blueprint. That's the beginning of prevention for a lot of things that are going to go happen down the road. Because let's face it, like, this world is got a lot of things going on for kids, and there's a lot of influences, and so we want to be our kids' strongest influence. And so when they're a teenager and they're looking to their friends and they're looking at TikTok and they're, you know, being pressured in different areas, that they always have that solid foundation of relationship with their parents from day one.
How can the viewers reach out to you for more information? Tell us a little bit about your company that you started. You have your own practice now, and a little bit about why that practice is dear to you.
Okay. So I have two practices. So Shine Coaching is my practice that I've been promoting on LinkedIn for a couple of years now. So I can be found on LinkedIn. And there, folks can book a 30-minute discovery call with me to see if how we would be a good fit. So that's one area. And then my private practice, my therapy, is called Calm Shores Counseling. And I'm licensed in Ontario, Nova Scotia, and PEI Canada. So if folks are looking for my help, then it would be with the coaching if they're outside of those provinces. But for anyone who is in those provinces, then Calm Shores Counseling.
Man,
And
you all over the place, Jacqueline.
you got to be these days. You got to be.
It has definitely been a pleasure having you on the show and sharing your journey. And I told you before, if you're going to be a therapist or you're in the therapist industry, I want to know about you. I got to know before I walk in your door. You definitely have opened up the doors, opened up the box, let us know who you are. Leave the viewers with something positive before we wrap up.
Sure. So, I've explained a lot today about my life, but I just want to say that forgiveness is key. absolutely adore my family. I believe that there's a lot of great things that have come out of my life, and I've turned pain into meaning and purpose. I like who I am. I like, how my life has shaped me, and I think that healing is possible. We can all overcome whatever adversity that were born into. It's not a life sentence. There's always hope for better.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.